Troll, and I am back with Landy. She is with Hickory Trail Hospital, and we are continuing our conversation from last time about mental health and how we want to normalize the conversation, just be able to talk openly and honestly about it, both from a personal perspective and also from a professional perspective for you. And so today, I really want to focus on this advocacy piece. Being an advocate for the mentally ill, or just people that struggle in general with mental illness. So I'll kind of tell you, my personal story. I've had a friend who has struggled. She's been diagnosed bipolar. I have permission to talk about this, but she was diagnosed as that probably about 17 years ago or so, and we had kind of lost touch a little bit after our kids were born, but then not too shortly after, kind of reconnected, and I've just been her friend and a help to her at times ever since then. And we just have such a journey of just going to the psychiatrist with her, going to the therapist with her, at times taking her into the hospital, sitting in the ER waiting for all the health screens to happen, and then for her to be transferred into a mental facility. And there's just been so many times where I've sat there in those rooms, usually with her, asleep or resting or something, and I just, this feeling will come over me, like, how do people do this alone? I don't know how they do, and I know people do, and it breaks my heart thinking about those that don't have anybody. And so I'm just very passionate about this, this advocacy that we can have and be for those that are around us that may need us. And I know that there's a whole spectrum of suffering and struggle, right? You've got probably everything from like mild depression to schizophrenia and everything in between. And so in thinking about what does it look like to sit in the trenches with somebody? What does it look like to really be there for them? And I think, overarching, when I think about me and my friend, it's just the fact that I've stayed, that I haven't left. And she's had a lot of friends that have said, sorry, this is too much, and they've stopped being her friend. And so, so that's one thing, just staying and continuing to walk that journey with someone. And then I think there's also sometimes just where you listen. Like you may not be able to do anything, like within your power to fix anything or to change circumstances or to bring healing where there needs to be healing. Like that's too big for you. Yeah. But you can stay and you can listen, and you can be a safe place for someone. And so I think that's kind of been my, my, I guess, game plan all these years. And so I think, just thinking about all of us that may know someone that can, how can we help them best? How do we approach being an advocate for someone? What are maybe some of the first steps, when someone comes to us with some really disturbing news or just a struggle, of how they're feeling. So just kind of want to talk through that with you and just see what kind of advice you have for our listeners, for this particular piece. So.
Yeah. So I think in so many situations, we see people a lot when they're in crisis, and so many times the family members will say, well, I wish I would have just approached them before we got to this point, but I was so worried about offending my loved one, or I was so worried about maybe being responsible for them getting sicker. But I think often a lot of people are quick to be offended in the days that we're in. And so I think people just aren't discussing. They're not talking about, hey, I've noticed this and I'm worried about you and I'm telling you and I'm being tough on you because I do love you and I do want you to get better. And I think that we could potentially avoid a lot of crisis in those situations if someone's willing to say, hey, I've noticed this. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do we need to maybe go see a counselor? Can I help you find a psychiatrist? And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think so often, I mean, I've been in counseling, you know. I think most of us probably should be in counseling.
Yeah.
And we do need to reach out for those resources. And had I not, who knows if I, would have gotten to a place where I needed to go to a more acute setting because I didn't have those outlets and I didn't reach for those resources. But I had people in my life that said, hey, I see that you're not okay, and I want you to be able to talk to someone that's not me. And I think often families and friends will put a lot of responsibility on themselves, like I have to respond. And I have to have a solution, and I have to have the answers. And like you said, sometimes you just have to listen.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay to say, I am not a professional, and I do not know how to respond to this situation, so can you please go to a professional? And I feel
I'll
like...
take you.
Yes,
Let me take you to someone who is more qualified to really walk with you, and I'll wait in the waiting room, or I'll, but yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And so I think just in so many situations, there are stopping points. Someone doesn't just, I was actually my church, they did a message a couple weeks ago talking about you don't just wake up and all of a sudden someone is just in this deep, dark place. It takes steps. And, sometimes something does happen. When it comes to mental illness, you can't control it, but usually there are steps and there are things that you can notice that, hey, something just doesn't seem right. Would you be willing to come to a counselor with me, or, talk to someone that might be able to help a little bit more? And it's okay to call people out in love.
Yeah, and there's certainly a way to do that. And I think that, if you have an established relationship with someone, and they know that you love them, then oftentimes there might be a twinge of offense that you still kind of have to push through. But overall, I think they're going to feel loved, and they're going to feel seen and heard, and I think that's really what we all want, right? And so especially when we're in situations where we are at the end of ourselves or we are in crisis, as the person in it, sometimes you just don't have the energy, or you just don't have the mental capacity to know what to do, and so you need those that are more objective and healthier in the moment to be able to stand in the gap for you and get you the help you need. So in the case of, let's just say a friend or family member, comes to you with just a heavy load, and maybe you don't really know what to do with it. You feel overwhelmed, you feel like, unqualified, or whatever it might be. Let's talk a little bit about healthy and appropriate boundaries, in mostly for maybe the healthier party, because I feel like we're all in a journey, right? And so, like, I may have healthier seasons than others, and then so may be super healthy when I'm not, and I need them, So I say that the healthier party, not to slam the unhealthier party, but does that make sense?
Yep.
So for the friends and family who are going to be the supportive, party in a situation, let's just talk a little bit about what does that look like for boundaries, and why do we need them?
Yeah. There is such thing as secondary trauma, and that's why so many police wives and doctors' wives and nurses' wives and husbands and spouses and family, sometimes they feel all of the feelings of that too. And it's the same for sharing your story with someone. You don't know necessarily what that's going to trigger in someone, and sometimes being an individual who's hearing a lot of those things, it can be really overwhelming and really frustrating. And it's okay sometimes to draw those lines and say, hey, listen, this is taking me to an unhealthy place, and I feel like I need to bring you more to the better resources now more than ever, because this is just too far beyond what I can deal with. And I think a lot of the time when boundaries become necessary is if that family member, I see it time and time again, there's family members that end up helping the individual that's struggling, and they just totally allocate their financial support or their emotional support, and it gets to a point where you can be taken advantage of being someone that is helping. And it's very important for you to sometimes say, listen, I've done all that I can do, and if you can't help yourself a little bit, then I have to kind of draw the line right now for me. And I think we see that a lot with our families, especially in the acute setting, because they have kind of exhausted all those benefits, and they have been able to just say, listen, I've got to just draw a line because I need you to help you. And I know I can say, sometimes people find the most healing when they do hit their rock bottom. And I think family and friends are so scared to let that person hit their rock bottom because they feel responsible or they feel guilty. But sometimes that's what that person needs to do to heal. Sometimes they have to realize how deep in the trenches they are to get help. And so it's okay to allow people to be responsible for their own health as well.
Yeah, I know, because the unhealthy, pendulum of that is codependency. And so
So real.
you don't,
so real.
It's like, how do you help without, allowing or enabling codependency? And so that's probably a whole nother show that we can talk more in depth about that. As the friend or family, there is a lot of energy, both mental and sometimes physical, in helping someone. And so you have to make sure that you are keeping tabs on how you are, because if you're not okay, then it's really, it can be a dangerous place to try and help someone else when there's really not enough within yourself.
And we preach that to our staff, and I think I mentioned earlier with first responders and with helpers, people have to recognize that they have to take care of them, because you cannot take care of someone else if you're not healthy. So it's very, very important, for sure.
Thank you so much for kind of diving into that a little bit more, and we'll definitely continue some of those buttons that we started to push. Codependency, boundaries. We can definitely unfold some of those things down the line. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And we'll see you later.